Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk YouTube and podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about Manny Machado, and we're going to be basically giving you our piece on what his case is for the MVP this year. Now, it does seem like Paul Goldschmidt is going to win the award, but we're going to be talking about why we think Manny should be at least talked about, because he's not even getting talked about, but why he should be in the race and why he should basically win the award. And right now, it's probably going to be Goldschmidt, like I said. Arenado is also in the mix, and it feels like Manny right now is almost ranked as the third guy. But we don't really think that's that correct. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. So, Isaac, with that said, what's your case for Machado this season?
That he's the only guy on his team with above like a 4 or 5 WAR. I want to say I don't know what Juan Soto's at in terms of the whole season. I know Ha-Seong Kim is around like 4. Jake Cronenworth's not doing what he was last year, so he's probably around a 3.5 or a 4. But when you talk about positional value, third base is probably one of the most valuable positions in baseball, and meaning his direct competition is Nolan Arenado. If you ask me, Manny Machado is having a better season than Nolan Arenado. You look at who provides more value to their team. Manny Machado definitely provides more value to the team in terms of Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt are back to back in the lineup. They both have so much help from each other that there's not sole focus on one guy. You can't really pitch around one or the other because you have to face them or you have to face the other guy. So it's kind of pick your poison. So throughout the whole, their whole schedule, neither of them have had to be the biggest worry in the lineup because they've both been very good. Also, they play in the easiest division in baseball. They get to play trash teams all the time. Manny has to play the Dodgers 19 times, Giants 19 times. Like, he has to play some very good teams throughout throughout the whole season. With some very good pitching staffs. I mean, the Dodgers have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. Arizona has Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen. Colorado doesn't really, unless I'm missing someone, Colorado doesn't really have anyone crazy. But the Giants have Logan Webb and Carlos Rodon. Like, these are some aces. And then you look at their division, and it's like Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns. Freddie Peralta's not having a very good season. Then who? I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head. But that's just not a very good division that they're in. So I don't really think. I think Paul Goldschmidt has a much better case than Nolan Arenado. I think Paul Goldschmidt will probably win it over Manny Machado, but I kind of think a lot of people are putting Nolan Arenado over Manny Machado, and that is not the case. Manny Machado has been much more valuable to the Padres than Nolan Arenado has been to the Cardinals, and we kind of bring it up all the time how we think like Nolan Arenado is not very overrated, but why does he get talked about so much more than Manny Machado? Like, for what reason? If they're both just as good defensively, Manny Machado puts up the same numbers. I mean, I feel like there's no reason that one guy should be talked about more than the other. Nonetheless, it's Nolan Arenado consistently on Twitter making these plays that I feel like Manny Machado makes in his sleep that I feel like I'm never surprised Manny Machado is making. If you look at F-WAR, which in the past few years, maybe not last year because I think Fernando ended up higher than Bryce Harper, but Fernando did miss, 30 games. So his MVP case wasn't very strong because of how many games he missed. But most of the time, it's the player that ends up with the highest F-WAR that ends up winning the MVP. That probably won't be the case again this year, but if you're going based off just that, Manny Machado would win the MVP because he has recently passed Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. And if you look at the playoff push, the Padres aren't here without Manny. I can firmly say 100% the Padres are not here without Manny. And for everyone that thought Fernando should have won the MVP last year, Manny Machado has the same WAR as Fernando did last year. So that's the MVP argument, but he's not going to get talked about in that MVP discussion the way Fernando did because he is not the superstar, the one that everyone loves the way everyone loved Fernando. Everyone hates Manny Machado. I mean, they did a poll. He is the most hated player potentially in baseball. So he's not going to get talked about the same. And it's really unfair because Manny Machado is having the best season of his career, one of the best seasons I've ever seen from a Padre, and the MVP season that we've all expected him to have since he came to San Diego.
Yeah, and also you bring up the hated part. That's not even like hated by other players. Like if you actually looked at like interactions that Manny has with other players, they're like extremely positive, like every single time. Like it's very clear that other players actually really like Manny. It's just fans. But I'm sure, like, of course, there's gonna be some guys that he didn't like, and Manny, of course, used to be a hothead when he was in Baltimore. And I think that's why that's the case, you know. But I wanted to bring up a couple points here. So I think Goldie's gonna win it, but if I'm looking at who's had the best season, Manny's had the best season. That's why it's dumb. Like I'm expecting Goldschmidt to win it. The way that baseball voting works, he's going to win it. Now, that's kind of the problem. Baseball is notorious for having the worst type of voting, the worst writers that are coming in and just literally have no idea what they're talking about. And that's the same thing for Hall of Fame. It's the same thing for awards. But if we're looking at who has had the better season, you brought up the pitching. Dude, it is not even close. Like, you look at Arizona, who's like fourth place, not a good team. Dude, they got stupid good pitching. Like, these teams in the West are way better. And I think the Rockies are like the one team that you bring up. That's the one. And also you play at quarters, I guess. But like you're going up against the Dodgers, you're going up against really good teams. And I will say I don't think that being on the same team should have that big of like a reason to give like another guy an advantage. But in this case, if you're looking at it, let's look at it Machado versus Arenado. Machado's had a better season. Also, Nolan Arenado has not had a better season than Manny Machado since 2019. Like, go look that up and tell me that he's had a better season because he hasn't. This is the third, I guess, 2.5 seasons in a row now that Manny's been better. And you can't really make the case. Just looking at numbers alone. I'm not talking like, I'm just saying that you go look at the numbers, it's very clear who's been better. Then you look at Manny versus Goldschmidt. One's a first baseman. Like, I get he's being better offensively, but one guy is playing first base, the other is playing third base. I don't like, and I know Chase isn't here, but Chase probably wouldn't like this if I was kind of ripping on first baseman. But like, it's the easiest position to play in the sport. Like that has to give you at least an advantage of like, well, at least Machado's out here playing Gold Glove caliber defense because he is, and maybe Arenado's a better fielder, but like, I don't know, bro. I just think it's hard to look at it and not even talk about him because if you're actually looking at who has played better, who's gone up against a better pitching, who has produced more offensively and defensively, it's Manny Machado. It really is. And if people want to bring up other stuff, like Goldschmidt's been better offensively, but it's pretty like in comparison to third base, it's pretty worthless on how valuable a first baseman is in comparison to a third baseman. Unless we're talking like, oh yeah, he's so horrible defensively that, you know, it's a Eric Hosmer type situation, but that's not Goldschmidt. It's just like, it's not like, oh, like, yeah, he's moving the needle because of his defense at first. It's just not the case. So I don't know. I guess you can kind of say with Goldschmidt, maybe I think there's a better case to be made, but I think it should be between Goldschmidt and Machado. And I don't really think it's close. And I think that's the problem with how baseball awards work. But with that said, Isaac, anything else you want to add on the case for Manny?
Yeah, I just looked at the rest of the Cardinals division. It's a bunch of crap. It's the Cubs. Let me see. Cubs, Reds, Pirates. Who even pitches for them? I don't know. I really don't know. But when you look
Hunter
at
Green,
yeah, I mean, that guy's crazy. But if you look at Machado's MVP case, the only reason he's not going to win is because he's Manny Machado. Like I said, if this was Fernando, he would probably win the MVP because he's such a superstar. Everyone loves him, and he's a very marketable player. But due for the sole reason that everyone hates Manny Machado, despite Manny Machado having a higher WAR than both of them, putting up a better season than both of them with almost essentially zero help. Not zero help. I mean, of course, he's got Juan. That's going to be everyone's argument. He's got Juan Soto. He's got Josh Bell. Go look at the numbers that they've put up. They haven't helped Manny all that much. Manny's been the one guy that, outside of a little, what would you say, like a 3-week stretch after he came back from a massive ankle injury, other than those few weeks, he's been nothing but consistent. And he's essentially the reason that the Padres would stay afloat because you even look at the pitching staff. Yu Darvish has been fantastic. Blake Snell has been fantastic. The other 3 guys have faltered since the All-Star break. And who's the guy that's kept us afloat? I mean, on offense at least, Manny Machado has kept us afloat the whole time. The season very well could have been another one of those 2021 season collapses, maybe a little less because the pitching staff is much better and the lineup is a little more deep. But we could very well be out of the playoff race if it wasn't for Manny. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, they play in such a trash division that they could have won 85, 86 games and won their division. The Padres had to play a team that has won 110 games 19 times. Did they lose every time? Yes, but I'll tell you what, Manny was not the sole reason that they lost. But other than that, Manny's my MVP. I'm sure Manny's every Padres fan's MVP. We have a lot of bias, but you just got to look at the stats. I understand Paul Goldschmidt's OPS and everything's very high, and he's most probably going to win. But positional value, that dude plays first. If you played baseball, you probably know how easy first is. An outfielder can go and play first and make it look easy. That's just my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of it. That's kind of all I have for Manny. The guy plays platinum glove type third base, and I'm excited to see where he finishes because it should not be third.
Yeah, so I think that's probably going to do it for today's episode. But let us know what you think. If you think we're off, if you think that Goldschmidt should win it, just kind of solely based on those offensive numbers. If you even think that Arenado's had a better season as well, just let us know what you think about that. But if you agree, you think Manny's MVP, then let us know that too. But kind of make your case in the comments if we're totally off. I don't know. I want to hear the cases for why we would be off, because I think the points are very valid, and I don't think we're writing off either Arenado or Goldschmidt. But I think it's actually a discussion, and it's not being talked about like a discussion, and that's the problem. But I think it's going to do it. Tomorrow's going to be the last game of the Padres regular season, so we'll do a recap for the overall regular season and kind of grade the team as a whole, I think, then. But yeah, thanks to you guys for listening, and we'll have a lot of Padres content throughout this playoffs. See you guys.